Oh, ow. Smacked the hell out of my hand on my desk. Okay. Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Kayla, and if you're not new, thanks for coming back. Always happy to have you. If you are new, I like to do a lot of book reading lifestyle content here on this channel, so if any of that interests you, make sure you stick around and join the crew. Today, we have another book review coming for 2023, our second book review of the year. We are flying through reading this year and I'm really excited about it. It is January 17th and I've already read 3 books this year and I'm like halfway through my 4th. We're getting a lot of reading done and I'm excited about it. So I'm gonna have a lot of bookish thoughts and a lot of reading to share with you guys this year. Today's video and book that we are talking about, I was super excited to read. It was in my most anticipated reads of 2023 video. It was in my January TBR, all of those things. And I was super excited to get it. The day that it launched, I ordered it on Amazon and it was here ready to go. But let's talk about it. And that is The Stolen Heir by Holly Black. In 2021, I read the entire Cruel Prince Folk of Heir series in probably about a week. I got a little bit obsessed. I read Cruel Prince in one day. The Wicked King I read in like 3 days, and then The Queen of Nothing I read again in like a 3-hour sitting. So I loved that series a lot more than I thought that I would. I had read Cruel Prince before and I liked it, but I didn't love it. But once I read the whole series straight through, absolutely loved it. So when I heard that there was a spin-off duology coming, I was very excited. So The Stolen Heir came out on January 3rd, so literally like 2 weeks ago now. And I read it over the weekend. Started this book on January 8th and then I finished it on January 14th, so it took me just under a week to read. And we're gonna talk about why. But first, this will be a spoiler-free review for you guys, and I'm gonna start with a summary of what happens in The Stolen Heir. I wasn't super sure what this would do in connection to the Folk of Heir series, and it wasn't exactly the spin-off that I thought it would be. Like, I really thought additional books in that series would more closely follow Cardan and Jude, who are the main characters from the Folk of Heir series, but that's not what this book is about. We actually don't see Jude and Cardan at all in this book, so if you're looking for them, you will not find them here. I'm so sorry to say. This book actually follows Oak, which is Jude's half-brother who, sorry, spoiler for the Cruel Prince series, is the heir to the kingdom of Elfhame, and he is technically in the lineage to inherit the throne if he would like. This book actually follows a completely different character named Ren. It's difficult to explain because this book is connected to the Folk of Heir series, but if you haven't read the Folk of Heir series, I don't think a lot of this will make sense. Like, this is a lot, it expands on like a lot of the political things that are set up in the Folk of Heir series, so you're going to have to read that first. But it follows Surin, or Ren, who's from the Court of Teeth in the Folk of Heir series, and how she is kind of betrothed to Oak. Like, that was a fuzzy detail I don't remember. Were they actually betrothed or not? But she is the heir to the Court of Teeth. But it follows her life and her childhood experience, and then she is intercepted by Oak when she's like 18, who needs her help to free his father, who has been kidnapped and taken following the events of the Folk of Heir series. Oak's father, Maddox, was a red cap who tried to like overthrow the whole King of Elfhame in the Folk of Heir series, and was very power hungry, was trying to use Oak and manipulate Oak for his own gains. He's exiled from Elfhame and Fairy. He's sent to the human world, and then he is then kidnapped and taken to the Court of Teeth, where he's kind of held prisoner, and Oak is trying to go free Maddox. So he takes Ren along with her to kind of appease her mother, Lady Nor, who's the queen of the Court of Teeth. That was a very long summary, and it was a little bit distracted because I found this book a little bit difficult to follow. I think, especially since it's been so long since the Folk of Heir series, to remember all of the details that feed into this spin-off was challenging, was a lot to remember. So if you can, I would read the Folk of Heir series closer to starting the Stolen Heir, especially Queen of Nothing, that last book. For me, this did not feel like a big enough part of the Queen of Nothing to warrant a duology. I do get that Holly Black is setting something up, but I like literally did not remember Surin being in the Court of Elfhame or anything like that. At all. I did not remember this betrothal. I did not remember any of these details about the Court of Teeth, about Maddox's exile even. I think I was just reading to get to the end to see if Cardan and Jude survived. So I kind of missed a lot of these details. Or if I, like when I read them, they weren't the most important pieces to me, so I didn't remember them super well. And I found that to be a big struggle in reading this book. I had to go back and Google a lot of things that happened in Queen of Nothing because I was like, wait, we're talking about like a minuscule part of Queen of Nothing, or like a very tiny scene in the scope of the Folk of Heir series. I did not love this book as much as I thought I would. It was not the spin-off I was hoping for. And like I said, with the plot being so tied to Queen of Nothing, but to such a small, for me, such a small part of Queen of Nothing, made it really hard to follow this book. And Holly Black goes back in time a lot to show us parts of Queen of Nothing that she didn't show us during Queen of Nothing, that it was kind of hard for me to keep track of everything that was going on in the past, in a different book series, in a previous series that I read a year ago, and also be present in understanding what's happening in the Stolen Heir. Not my favorite thing, not the easiest thing to do. I also, for me, like one of my favorite parts of the Cruel Prince series and the Folk of Heir series was being in Fairy. Fairy was a very like whimsical, magical, fantastical place. Being in Elfhame and being in these courts, you felt like you were in a different world. A lot of this book took place in the human world. A very small portion of it, I feel like, took place in Fairy, and particularly not to the end are you really in Fairy. The rest of it's just kind of like, we're moving through Portland, Maine. And I'm like, okay, this is not quite the escapist fantasy fiction that I was hoping for. And that, I felt like, was such a strong high note of the Folk of Heir series that it fell really flat for me in this duology. Also important to point out that this is a duology. There will be another book coming, I don't know when. We see a lot of Ren, who is this girl who lives very isolated, away from Fairy. She's run away from Fairy, wants nothing to do with it. She grew up first in the human world, very similar to Jude, which I thought was kind of a cool thing for Holly Black to do, right? At the start of The Cruel Prince, Jude is a human girl living in the human world, who's taken to Fairy. Ren grows up in the human world but is Fairy and taken back home and returns back to the mortal world. The two people that are not living in the place that they were, where they come from, right? Jude is from the mortal world and chooses to stay in Fairy. Ren is a fairy who chooses to stay in the mortal world. I thought that was like a really cool kind of parallelism between the two books. And it made me think that Ren and Jude would connect really well. So I was kind of hoping for them to interact throughout the book, but they did not. But Ren's a very, very sad character. She's seen some things. It was a little bit dark. You know, we kind of start the book where she's being ripped away from her mortal family who's adopted and raised her, after they all told her how like atrocious and terrifying she is, and she's forced back to this fairy world where she's abused and she's held captive and she's used as a pawn and not as a person, and her family has, like, her royal fairy family has tortured her for years on years and forces her to run away from Fairy to live in the woods by herself. And she watches this human family from their windows and just misses them. How sad is that? Like, she calls them her unfamily. Like, that to me was just like, this is really freaking sad. So that was not something that I was expecting. Like, another parallel to Jude, I felt like Jude experienced those really difficult things in The Cruel Prince and like use them as her motivation, kind of, whereas Ren just felt very, very sad. And I think Ren needed to see somebody and to talk to somebody about all that she's experienced. I liked her evolution. She was a very like insecure, like down on herself person who didn't really believe in herself, to somebody who takes control at the end of the book and really kind of forges her own path and makes her own decisions and empowers herself over the course of the book. So you see a really, really big change in Ren from the beginning, where she's like very insecure, down, feeling very unloved, to being like, I'm a powerful badass at the end, which is very cool. I feel like a big arc of this story was we were supposed to buy into the Oak and Ren love story. They were childhood friends, and Oak would sneak out to go help Ren and to play with Ren. Oak had some problems in Fairy growing up, and he tried to run away and find Ren and join her and all of these things. And I feel like we're supposed to just take that at face value and be like, yes, they're gonna love each other. But I'm not seeing it. I wasn't buying into it. It could be that mentally I was comparing their kind of relationship and romance to Jude and Carden, which I don't think I should do, to be honest, because they do not have the best romance either. But anyway, I wanted them to just be friends. Like, I really did not need a romance aspect of Ren and Oak. Like, I like them playing games and talking to each other and just like comforting each other as friends. That like the romance felt a little bit forced for me. Like, Ren has never experienced any sort of love in her life, that it felt like kind of like weak to me for like the first person that's even nice to her, for her to just like blindly fall in love with them, especially when like throughout the whole time she's hearing all these things about how like he's betraying her and like he's holding secrets from her and he's just using her for his own gain, which everybody in her life has done before. I don't feel like she should fall in love with him. That's just my personal take, and I still don't know if I can trust Oak. I feel like I read that book, and at the end I was like, I don't know if I trust you. I have a feeling that in the next book you guys are going to full-fledged form a romance, and I don't really want you to, because I think you're kind of a shady guy, Oak. So it's kind of tough there. Like, there were some moments I was like, oh, that's really sweet. Or like she would like randomly get jealous of him dancing with people, and I'm like, girly, you know that he's using you. You've heard that he's using you. You're actively kind of trying to betray him and go behind his back. Why are you getting jealous that he's dancing with somebody? Like, I get it, he's handsome, but also like I feel like as reasonable readers, we do need to keep in mind that Holly Black does these things where she creates these romance interests, but like Oak has this beautiful golden hair and all of this stuff, but he also has hooves. We don't need to buy into the love with the guy with the hooves. We don't. Carden, handsome, mischievous, bad boy energy, has a tail. We need to bear these things in mind when we root for a romance, okay? And it always throws me off in Holly Black books. So I didn't totally buy into the Oak romance, and I'm really, really kind of hoping that that's not an arc that continues, but I have a feeling the arc will continue. I would much prefer them to just be friends, to be acquaintances, to be partners in crime, and partners in political intrigue, rather than romantic partners. Overall, I think this book started pretty slowly for me. Like, probably in the first 50 chapters we encounter Oak and the like main plot of this current book starts. Things were happening and I was like, I don't necessarily understand the point of why this is happening, and it's taking a really, really long time for these things to happen. Like, parts that could have been left out that we didn't necessarily need, that just felt like page filler space, and I'm like, okay, Holly, let's keep this moving. Let's get to the point. So it felt kind of like a slow read. I had this experience where I started reading it and I was like, ah, oh, I'm back in Fairy. I love this. And then I realized how different it was from the Folk of Air series, and it just slowed me down. And I was like, I don't really want to keep reading, but I want to see where she takes this story. Like, probably throughout the first 150, 200 pages, I was not super interested in this book and thought about DNFing it, but I know that she could be setting something up, and I just had to see where the end got to. I think I thought this was a continuation of The Cruel Prince instead of an adjacent spin-off, and that was maybe the wrong mindset to go into this book that set me up to be a little bit disappointed. But once I got to page like 250, the last 100 pages, a lot happens. You're back in Fairy, and it feels like things start to come together a little bit better, and we're not dealing with a lot of like side detail things that happened in the past that we either don't hear about or are like very minute details that weren't the focus of Queen of Nothing, that we didn't hear about, we didn't really know about, that we didn't really pay attention to, that were really big focal points of The Stolen Heir. So I think it is hard to get into at first. If you can make it to page 200, 250, I think you're gonna really like the ending, because I actually really liked the ending of the book. And who Ren is in those last 100, 150 pages, much better than I liked than who she was at the beginning of the book. But that being said, that's a lot of the book that you have to kind of like just work through and get through to get to the actual enjoyable part of the book, in my opinion. Based on the ending and where she leaves us, I think I definitely want to read the second one, because the ending was fantastic. Like I said, that last 100, 150 pages were great. It just took a really long time to get there and to be in a place to enjoy the book. Right, Mabel? Oh, you got a taco? Somebody has brought us an offering. What is that? Oh, what are we supposed to do with this now? Like I said, that's a big ask to get through the whole book, but I think those last 100, 150 pages really make the book and are really enjoyable compared to the rest of it. You just kind of have to get there. Stolen Heir duology says not coming out until February 27, 2024, which is The Prisoner's Throne is the title. So yeah, I have another year to read it, and I will need to reread this book for sure to understand the second one. So I would maybe hold off and wait until you're a little bit closer to the pub date of the second one. I typically do that. I was just too excited to go back to Fairy to wait, so I read this book. This is not The Cruel Prince Part 2. This is not a continuation, or it is, but it's a very loose, very adjacent continuation of The Cruel Prince. It is like the same overall political plot, but it does not directly follow the events of The Cruel Prince, or even reasonably a time frame after that. It's like 10 years after what's happened. You will not see Jude and Carden in this book. You will not interact with them. Really, the only character that super carries over from the Folk of Air series is Maddox, and you don't see him until the very end. So if there were characters that you were hoping to like reunite with, you're probably not going to in this book. It took a really long time to get into this book. There's probably about, for me, there were about 200 pages where I was like, oh my god, when is this gonna be fun? Those last 150 pages packed a powerful punch for me and made me super excited and very excited for the next book. We're not so much in the world of Fairy, which if that was a big part of the Cruel Prince for you, just bear that in mind. It's gonna be a little bit less time in Fairy, a little bit less time interacting with these characters in these whimsical enchanting settings and balls and things like that. But we do have some cool parallels and kind of mirrors and foils of between Jude and Ren. I think they're very similar but in opposite ways, which is cool to see come to life in The Stolen Heir. Overall, I gave this book 3 stars, honestly probably like 3.5, because that ending was really good and I liked the character development for Ren, but it just felt like a really slow ride. Wouldn't run to it right away. I was super excited. This was one of my top releases for 2023 and it just kind of fell a little bit flat for me, so I wouldn't put this at the very top of your TBR, or like wouldn't say you need to run out and buy it right now to read, especially if the next one doesn't come out until 2024. You're gonna have to read them close together anyway if you really want to appreciate that plot arc and figure out how that story finishes. So I would just wait personally. And this is like something that I don't do very often. I'll probably be listing this book on my Pango very soon to sell. I use Pango Books to sell books that I'm purging when I go through my library and find books that I don't need to keep. But very rarely do I read a book and immediately list it to sell. I just didn't love this enough to need a hardcover, beautiful edition to keep in my library. So I will be selling this. The link will be down below if you want to look at any of the books that I have up for sale right now. But worst case, if I need to finish out the duology and reread it, I'll buy it on my iPad or I'll buy the paperback. But you fell flat for me and I'm so sorry. I'm a little bit bummed. I had a lot of high hopes for this book, but overall it's not the worst thing I've ever read. It's just, I feel like spin-offs are hard. I feel like everybody has a spin-off in their heart that they want, or if they love a series, that there's something specific that they want to experience and go back to in a spin-off, and this wasn't what I asked for. This was not on my wish list, Holly Black. I'm open to seeing what she does with it. It could turn out really great. For me, this just wasn't a 5-star read, and I was a little bit bummed about it, but that is all that I have to say about The Stolen Heir. I feel like there were a lot of thoughts about this book that were brewing while I was reading it. The last thing I will say is this had major Spiderwick Chronicle vibes, if you remember the Spiderwick Chronicles from Lord knows how long ago. Yeah, okay, and I thought so. I was trying to remember. I think Holly Black wrote the Spiderwick Chronicles, and she definitely did, but this had, for me, a lot of Spiderwick Chronicles energy, if that helps. But let me know what you think about the Folk of Air, Cruel Prince, Stolen Heir vibe situation in the comments down below. And I'm gonna say for our emoji of the day for this video, leave me a little spider emoji because there's some Spiderwick Chronicle energy. But that's all I have for you guys today. I will see you guys in my next one and over on my Instagram at RoyReadingCo. I hope you have a wonderful day wherever you are, and I'll see you in my next one. Happy reading!